My daughter's made-up bedtime monster revealed her pediatrician's crimes. The whispering crow only came out when Lily was scared. That was the rule we invented when she was 4 years old and terrified of the dark. The whispering crow was her protector, her imaginary guardian who watched over her bedroom and kept away nightmares. She would tell me about him in elaborate detail: his black feathers that shimmered purple in moonlight, his crooked beak, his gentle voice that sounded like wind through leaves. We turned him into a ritual. Every night before bed, I would ask if the whispering crow was watching. Lily would check her window, nod seriously, and say, "He's here, Mama. I'm safe now." Then she would sleep soundly. It was adorable, harmless, the kind of childhood imagination that parents treasure. Until the morning my 11-year-old daughter looked at me across the breakfast table and said, "The whispering crow came to Dr. Novak's office yesterday." My coffee mug stopped halfway to my mouth. Lily was staring at her cereal, her voice flat and strange. "Why would the whispering crow go there?" I asked carefully. "You only see him when you're scared. Were you scared at your checkup?" Lily didn't answer. She just kept stirring her cereal in slow circles, her face pale. After a long moment, she said, "Can I stay home from school today?" My daughter never asked to stay home, never faked sick, never complained about tests or mean kids. Something was wrong, and my stomach twisted into a knot that wouldn't loosen for the next 6 months. The whispering crow started during a thunderstorm in April when Lily was 4. She had come running into my bedroom at 2 in the morning, sobbing about monsters under her bed. My husband David was traveling for work, and I was exhausted from solo parenting, but I walked her back to her room and sat on her bed in the dark. "There are no monsters," I told her. "I promise you're safe." But Lily kept crying. "How do you know?" she asked. "What if they come when you leave?" I was too tired for logic, so I made something up. "Because the whispering crow is watching over you," I said. "He's a magic bird who lives in the oak tree outside your window. He only comes out at night to protect children. Monsters are afraid of him." Lily stopped crying. She looked at the window where moonlight filtered through the curtains. "Is he there now?" "Always," I said. "He never leaves his post." The next morning, Lily drew pictures of the whispering crow at breakfast. He had evolved overnight from my vague description into a fully realized character. She insisted he had purple-black feathers, yellow eyes, and a crooked beak from fighting off a nightmare wolf. She said he whispered warnings about danger, but only she could hear him. David thought it was hilarious when he got home. Our daughter has an imaginary guard bird now? But I loved it. Lily's nightmares stopped completely. She slept through the night. The whispering crow became part of our routine, a comforting bedtime ritual that lasted for years. By the time Lily turned 7, the whispering crow had mostly faded. She still mentioned him occasionally, but more as a fond memory than active imagination. She was growing up, getting interested in soccer and chapter books, leaving behind some of her little kid magic. But she never quite abandoned him completely. Sometimes when she was anxious about something, a big test or a sleepover at a new friend's house, she would mention seeing the crow. It became her private shorthand for feeling worried. If she said, "I think the whispering crow might visit tonight," I knew she needed extra reassurance. It was sweet, actually, a little emotional vocabulary she had created for herself. David and I never discouraged it. Our pediatrician, Dr. Raymond Novak, thought it was developmentally healthy when I mentioned it during a checkup. "Imaginary friends and protectors are completely normal," he said, making a note in Lily's chart. "It shows strong creative intelligence and emotional regulation. Some children maintain these figures well into adolescence. Nothing to worry about." Dr. Novak had been Lily's pediatrician since birth. He came highly recommended by 3 different friends when we moved to Riverside, a small city in Oregon where David had taken a job as a civil engineer. Novak had a pristine reputation, 20 years of practice, and a gentle manner with children that put them instantly at ease. Dr. Novak's office was in a medical plaza near the river, a cheerful space decorated with colorful murals and tropical fish tanks. Lily loved going there as a toddler. Novak would let her listen to her own heartbeat with his stethoscope, would make silly voices while checking her ears, would give her stickers shaped like dinosaurs. He remembered details about her life between visits, asking about her soccer team and her favorite books. He was the kind of doctor parents felt lucky to have, the kind you recommended to other families without hesitation. I never questioned leaving Lily alone with him during examinations. It never occurred to me to question it. He was a pediatrician, a trusted medical professional, someone whose entire career was built on caring for children. When Lily turned 10, Novak explained that he preferred doing physical exams privately at that age. "She's getting older now," he told me in his calm, authoritative voice. "Pre-adolescent children often feel embarrassed having parents present during examinations. It's better for their dignity and for me to conduct proper assessments if I can speak with her alone. I'll call you back in to discuss any concerns afterward." It made sense. I remembered being 11 and mortified when my own mother insisted on staying in the room while my doctor examined me. Of course, Lily deserved privacy. I waited in the lobby reading magazines while Novak conducted his examinations, never thinking twice about it. The morning Lily mentioned the whispering crow at breakfast, my instincts screamed that something was wrong. I called the school and said she had a stomach bug, then spent the morning trying to get her to talk. Sweetheart, why did the Whispering Crow come to Dr. Novak's office? Did something happen that scared you? Lily was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, hugging a pillow. She wouldn't look at me. I don't want to talk about it. Lily, please. You only see the crow when something's wrong. You can tell me anything. I promise I won't be mad. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Dr. Novak said, I'm growing up and he needs to check me more carefully now. He said it's normal for doctors to do it. Is that true? My heart started pounding. Check you how? He said I wouldn't understand the medical terms. He said all girls my age get checked this way and I shouldn't tell anyone because other kids would be jealous that I'm mature enough for grown-up exams now. Lily's voice was shaking. But it hurt, Mama. And I kept thinking about monsters. And then I saw the Whispering Crow in the corner of the examination room, and I knew something bad was happening. You said the crow only comes when I'm in danger. I felt like I was falling through space. Every maternal instinct I had was shrieking in alarm, but I forced myself to stay calm. I sat down next to Lily and took her hand gently. What exactly did Dr. Novak do during your checkup yesterday? Lily started crying. She told me haltingly, in fragments, about the examination that had happened while I sat in the lobby reading about home renovation projects. Dr. Novak had locked the examination room door. He had told her to undress completely, no gown, and lie down on the table. He had touched her in ways that had nothing to do with medical care, telling her the whole time that this was standard procedure, that all pediatricians did this, that she was lucky to have a doctor who was so thorough. He said if she told anyone, people would think she was making it up because children often confuse normal medical exams with inappropriate touch. He said her parents would be angry at her for lying about a respected doctor. The entire time, Lily said, she kept seeing the Whispering Crow in the corner of the room, perched on top of a cabinet, watching her with those yellow eyes. She knew then, with absolute certainty, that she wasn't safe, that the crow had come to warn her, that something terrible was happening even if Dr. Novak said it was normal. I called David at work and told him to come home immediately. Then I called the police. The female officer who answered listened to my initial report and her voice changed, becoming urgent and focused. Don't let your daughter bathe or change clothes. Don't discuss any more details with her. We're sending a detective who specializes in child abuse cases. She'll be there within the hour. Detective Alicia Brennan arrived 45 minutes later, a woman in her early 50s with short gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. She spoke to Lily alone first, with my permission, using a video recording setup she had brought with her. I waited in the kitchen with David, both of us holding each other and crying. When Brennan finished the interview, she came out looking grim. I'm taking Lily to the hospital for a forensic examination, she said. I know this is traumatic, but we need to document everything immediately. The exam will be conducted by a nurse trained in collecting evidence. After that, I'll need statements from both of you. David's voice came out hoarse. Did he hurt her? I can't discuss the details of her statement, Brennan said. But yes, this is a criminal investigation now. I'll be honest with you. Lily's account is specific and credible. The language she used, the details she provided, these are consistent with sexual abuse by a medical professional. The forensic examination confirmed that Lily had been assaulted. The nurse practitioner who conducted it, a woman named Grace Sutton with trauma certification, was gentle and professional, but I could see the anger in her eyes when she finished. Physical findings are consistent with your daughter's account, she told Detective Brennan while I held Lily in the waiting room. I'll have the full report to you within 24 hours. Brennan went directly from the hospital to the Riverside Police Department and presented the case to her lieutenant. Within 3 hours, they had a warrant for Dr. Novak's arrest. He was taken into custody at his office that same evening, in front of his staff and the parents sitting in the waiting room. The news spread through Riverside like wildfire. Dr. Novak, the beloved pediatrician, arrested for child sexual abuse. Parents were calling each other in panic. Had he hurt their children too? How long had this been going on? Why hadn't anyone noticed? The local news covered the arrest extensively. They showed footage of Novak being led out in handcuffs, his face carefully neutral. They interviewed parents outside his office, many of them crying, talking about how much they had trusted him. The medical board suspended his license immediately pending investigation. His office closed within 48 hours. Detective Brennan called us 3 days after Novak's arrest. We need you to come to the station, she said. There are developments you need to know about. At the station, Brennan led us into a conference room where another detective, Thomas Ruiz, was waiting with a laptop and stacks of files. After we arrested Dr. Novak, we executed a warrant to search his office and his home, Brennan said. What we found suggests your daughter is not his only victim. We recovered video recordings from a hidden camera in his examination room. The footage goes back 7 years. I thought I might vomit. David grabbed my hand so tightly it hurt. Ruiz opened the laptop and turned it so we could see the screen. We've identified 43 children on these recordings, he said. 43 patients that Novak assaulted during private examinations. The youngest was 6 years old. The oldest was 14. The videos show clear evidence of sexual abuse disguised as medical examination. He recorded everything, probably for his own gratification. The recordings are date-stamped and time-stamped. They're going to be critical evidence in court. Brennan's face was hard. We're in the process of identifying all the victims and notifying their parents. This is going to get worse before it gets better. The media coverage will intensify. There will be a firestorm when people realize the scope of this. She was right. Within a week, Riverside was drowning in the scandal. 43 families had been notified that their children appeared in Novak's recordings. Some of the children were old enough to confirm what had happened to them. Others, the younger ones, had no memory of anything wrong, or had been too small to understand what was happening. Parents were devastated, enraged, demanding to know how this had been allowed to continue for 7 years. How had no one reported him? How had no child ever told? The answers, Detective Brennan explained at a community meeting organized by the police department, were complicated and disturbing. Predators like Dr. Novak are skilled at manipulation, she said. He chose vulnerable moments when children were alone and had been conditioned to trust medical authority. He framed the abuse as legitimate medical care. He told victims they were special, mature, receiving advanced treatment. He warned them that no one would believe them if they reported him. Many children convinced themselves it must be normal because a doctor was doing it. Others were too young to articulate what happened. Some tried to tell parents and were dismissed because people couldn't believe a respected pediatrician would do such things. One mother stood up in the audience crying, "My son told me 3 years ago that he didn't like the way Dr. Novak touched him during checkups. I told him he was being silly, that doctors have to examine patients, that he needed to be brave. I scheduled another appointment and made him go. Oh God, I made him go back." The guilt among parents was crushing. I felt it myself, even though Lily had only been victimized once and had told me immediately. Why hadn't I questioned the private examinations? Why had I assumed a pediatrician was automatically safe? Why had I been reading magazines in the lobby instead of insisting on staying in the room? David and I started taking Lily to therapy twice a week with a psychologist who specialized in childhood trauma. Dr. Vanessa Price was in her 40s, calm and competent, with an office full of art supplies and comfortable furniture. She worked with Lily on processing what had happened, on understanding that none of it was her fault, on managing the anxiety and fear that had taken root after the assault. Children who have been victimized by authority figures often struggle with trust for years afterward, Dr. Price told us. Lily's imagination may have saved her from more extensive trauma. The fact that she recognized danger through her whispering crow symbol, that she told you immediately, that speaks to her resilience and the strength of your relationship. Many children in similar situations stay silent for years. But Lily was struggling. She had nightmares constantly. She refused to go to any doctor's appointments, even with a female physician we found in a different practice. She became anxious around adult men, including teachers and coaches she had previously liked. She stopped playing soccer because the referee was male and she panicked during games. The criminal case against Dr. Raymond Novak moved forward with bureaucratic slowness that felt like torture. He was initially charged with 43 counts of child sexual abuse, one for each identified victim. His defense attorney, a slick man named Gregory Hunt from a Portland firm, argued for bail, claiming Novak was not a flight risk and had deep ties to the community. The prosecutor, a woman named Catherine Rhodes who had been with the district attorney's office for 15 years, opposed bail vehemently. Dr. Novak is accused of systemic sexual abuse of minors over a 7-year period, she told the judge during the bail hearing. The evidence against him is substantial and damning. He used his position of medical authority to victimize vulnerable children. He represents a clear danger to the community. If released, he will have access to children and the means to flee prosecution. The state requests he be held without bail pending trial. The judge agreed. Novak remained in county jail, held without bail while the case built against him. His arrest made national news. Major outlets sent reporters to Riverside to cover the story. Pediatrician accused of abusing dozens of patients over 7 years. Hidden cameras found in examination room. Community in shock. Medical experts interviewed on television talked about the betrayal of trust, the vulnerability of children in medical settings, the systemic failures that allowed predators to operate unchecked. Catherine Rhodes reached out to our family directly. She wanted Lily to testify at trial. "I understand this is traumatic," she said, meeting with David and me in her office downtown. "But your daughter's testimony will be powerful." She reported immediately. She can articulate what happened to her. She's credible and sympathetic. The defense will try to argue that these were legitimate medical examinations misinterpreted by children and anxious parents. Lily can refute that directly. I looked at David. We had talked about this possibility, had discussed it with Dr. Price and with Lily herself. Lily wanted to testify. Despite her anxiety, despite her nightmares, she wanted to face Dr. Novak in court and tell the truth. "She's 11 years old," I said. "Will they really put her through cross-examination?" "The defense has the right to question witnesses," Rhodes said. "But I'll prepare her thoroughly. The judge will allow accommodations because she's a minor. And I promise you, I will not let Gregory Hunt traumatize your daughter on the stand." We agreed to let Lily testify. Rhodes began meeting with her once a week to prepare. They practiced answering questions, practiced staying calm under pressure, practiced telling her story clearly and completely. Dr. Price continued therapy sessions to help Lily manage the stress. Meanwhile, the case grew even larger. More victims came forward, children who hadn't been on the recordings but who now realized what had happened to them during examinations. The final count reached 61 identified victims over a 7-year period. Dr. Novak's wife filed for divorce 3 months after his arrest. She released a statement through her attorney saying she had no knowledge of her husband's crimes and was horrified by his actions. Their 2 adult children stopped visiting him in jail. His medical colleagues released statements condemning him and expressing shock. Everyone who had known him claimed they never suspected anything. Meanwhile, civil lawsuits began piling up. 40 families filed suit against Novak personally, against his medical practice, and against the hospital system that credentialed him. The lawsuits alleged negligence, failure to supervise, and systemic failures that enabled years of abuse. Lawyers smelled blood in the water and descended on Riverside offering to represent victims. The hospital system's insurance company settled quickly, paying out millions of dollars to avoid trial and public exposure of their oversight failures. But the criminal case, the one that mattered most to me, crawled forward with agonizing slowness. The trial was scheduled for October, 11 months after Lily's disclosure. 11 months of waiting, of therapy appointments, of watching my daughter struggle with trauma while the man who hurt her sat in jail preparing his defense. Catherine Rhodes kept us updated on developments. The defense strategy became clear through pretrial motions. Gregory Hunt would argue that Dr. Novak had conducted legitimate medical examinations that were later mischaracterized by parents looking for someone to blame for their children's normal sexual development concerns. Hunt filed motions to suppress the video evidence, claiming the search warrant had been improperly obtained. The judge denied the motion. Hunt filed motions to exclude testimony from certain victims, claiming their accounts were contaminated by media coverage and parent coaching. The judge allowed most of the testimony but imposed restrictions on how many victims could testify to avoid overwhelming the jury. Hunt filed a motion to have Lily's testimony excluded entirely, arguing that her reference to an imaginary protector creature demonstrated she couldn't distinguish fantasy from reality. Catherine Rhodes demolished that argument in her response brief. The defense wants the jury to believe that a child's creative imagination disqualifies her from being a truthful witness, she wrote. This is absurd and offensive. Lily Campbell used an imaginative framework she created as a young child to recognize and communicate that she was in danger. Far from indicating unreliability, this demonstrates her cognitive sophistication and emotional intelligence. She will be a compelling and credible witness, which is exactly why the defense wants to exclude her. The judge denied Hunt's motion. Lily would testify. The trial began on a Monday in October. David and I sat in the courtroom's front row, directly behind the prosecution table. Lily was not allowed in the courtroom until her testimony because she was a witness. She stayed home with my mother, who had flown in from Arizona to help with childcare during the trial. Dr. Raymond Novak sat at the defense table in an expensive suit, his gray hair neatly trimmed, his expression neutral. He looked like a respectable professional, exactly the kind of person juries wanted to trust. That was the danger, Catherine Rhodes had warned us. Novak looked the part of a good doctor. Hunt would use that appearance to his advantage. The jury selection took 2 days. Rhodes used her challenges to exclude anyone who expressed automatic deference to medical professionals or skepticism toward child abuse allegations. Hunt tried to exclude anyone who had strong negative reactions to the charges or who had children similar in age to the victims. They ended up with a jury of 7 women and 5 men, ranging in age from 25 to 68. In her opening statement, Rhodes laid out the case methodically. Over 7 years, Dr. Raymond Novak betrayed the trust of 61 children and their families, she said. He used his position as a respected pediatrician to sexually abuse vulnerable patients during private medical examinations. He told these children that his actions were normal medical procedures. He warned them not to tell anyone. He recorded his crimes on hidden cameras, creating a library of child sexual abuse material for his own gratification. The evidence you will see and hear during this trial is overwhelming and disturbing. It will prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Raymond Novak is a predator who weaponized his medical degree to victimize children. Gregory Hunt's opening statement painted a different picture. Dr. Novak dedicated his entire career to caring for children, he said. For 20 years, he provided excellent medical care to thousands of patients. He conducted thorough professional examinations exactly as he was trained to do in medical school. What you will hear during this trial is not evidence of crimes, but evidence of misunderstanding, of parents and children who confused proper medical care with something sinister. In our current climate of panic about child abuse, we have lost the ability to distinguish between appropriate medical examination and inappropriate contact. Dr. Novak is a victim of that panic, a good man whose reputation and career have been destroyed by false allegations. It was infuriating to listen to. David's hands were clenched into fists. But Rhodes had warned us this would happen. Hunt's entire strategy was to make the jury question whether Novak had actually done anything wrong or whether this was mass hysteria. The prosecution's case began with Detective Alicia Brennan walking the jury through the investigation. She testified about receiving my initial report, about interviewing Lily, about the forensic examination, about obtaining the warrant for Novak's arrest. She described searching his office and finding the hidden camera, a tiny lens embedded in what looked like a smoke detector mounted on the wall opposite the examination table. The camera had a direct view of the examination table, Brennan said. It was motion-activated and recorded to a secure digital storage device hidden in Dr. Novak's private office. We recovered 7 years of footage. The prosecution played portions of the video recordings in court. The jury watched in horrified silence as Dr. Novak sexually assaulted child after child during examinations, all while maintaining a calm professional demeanor and speaking in soothing medical terms. The footage was damning and incontrovertible. Several jurors cried watching it. One juror asked for a break and was seen vomiting in the courthouse bathroom. Hunt objected repeatedly, claiming the videos were prejudicial and inflammatory. The judge overruled him every time. These recordings are direct evidence of the alleged crimes, she said. The jury has a right to see them. Over the next 2 weeks, Rhodes called 12 victims to testify. They ranged in age from 13 to 21, the oldest having been assaulted 7 years earlier when she was 14. Each one told a similar story. Private examinations, inappropriate touching disguised as medical procedure, warnings not to tell anyone, years of confusion and shame before realizing what had been done to them. Some had tried to tell parents and been dismissed. Others had stayed silent until Detective Brennan contacted them. Their testimony was heartbreaking and powerful. Hunt's cross-examination strategy was aggressive and ugly. He questioned why the victims hadn't reported immediately. He suggested they were motivated by financial compensation from civil lawsuits. He implied they had been coached by therapists and parents. He tried to make them doubt their own memories and perceptions. Watching Gregory Hunt cross-examine teenage girls about their sexual abuse was one of the most enraging experiences of my life. He was technically polite, never raising his voice, but his questions dripped with skepticism and accusation. "Isn't it true you received a settlement of $200,000 from the hospital system?" he asked one victim. "Yes," she said. "And isn't it true that you didn't report this alleged abuse until after you learned other families were receiving financial compensation?" "I didn't report it because I thought it was my fault," the girl said, her voice shaking. "Because Dr. Novak told me it was normal and I believed him. I only realized it was abuse when I saw the news coverage and heard other people describing the same things he did to me." Hunt tried to shake every witness this way, but none of them broke. They had been through too much therapy, too much preparation. They knew their truth. Catherine Rhodes rebuilt each witness on redirect examination, gently guiding them through explanations of trauma responses and delayed disclosure. The jury looked increasingly angry at Hunt as the trial progressed. Finally, in the trial's 3rd week, it was Lily's turn to testify. Rhodes called her name, and a bailiff brought her in from the witness waiting room. My daughter walked into that courtroom in a blue dress I had bought specifically for this day, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face pale but determined. She was sworn in and sat in the witness box, her feet barely touching the floor. Catherine Rhodes approached gently, her voice warm and encouraging. "Hi, Lily. Thank you for being here today. Can you tell the jury how old you are?" "I'm 11, Lily said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "And do you know why you're here in court today?" "Yes, to tell the truth about what Dr. Novak did to me." Rhodes walked Lily through her testimony carefully. Lily described going to the appointment for her annual checkup, described her mother waiting in the lobby, described Dr. Novak locking the examination room door and telling her to undress completely. She testified about the assault in simple, clear language that Rhodes had practiced with her. She explained that she knew something was wrong because of the Whispering Crow. "Can you tell the jury about the Whispering Crow?" Rhodes asked. Lily looked directly at the jury. "The Whispering Crow is something my mom and I made up when I was little. He's like a guardian who watches over me when I'm scared. We said he only comes when something dangerous is happening, and I saw him in Dr. Novak's office in the corner of the room. I knew then that I wasn't safe, even though Dr. Novak was saying everything was normal. The crow doesn't lie." Several jurors were crying. One woman in the front row was wiping her eyes with a tissue. Lily's testimony was devastating in its simplicity and credibility. Rhodes finished her direct examination and turned to the defense. "Your witness." Gregory Hunt approached the witness box with a patronizing smile. "Hello, Lily. You seem like a very creative young girl. Do you have a lot of imaginary friends?" "Objection," Rhodes said immediately. "Relevance." "I'm exploring the witness's capacity to distinguish reality from imagination, Your Honor," Hunt said. The judge frowned. "You may proceed, but be very careful, Mr. Hunt." Hunt turned back to Lily. "So this Whispering Crow, he's not real, is he? You made him up?" "Yes," Lily said. "I made him up when I was 4. "And you sometimes see him even though he doesn't exist?" "I see him in my imagination when something bad is happening. He's like a signal my brain uses to tell me I'm in danger." Hunt's smile widened. "So, when you saw the Whispering Crow in Dr. Novak's office, you were imagining things?" Lily looked at him with an expression far older than her years. "No, I was recognizing danger. The crow is imaginary, but the danger was real. Dr. Novak was hurting me, and my brain knew it even if I didn't want to believe it. The crow is how I pay attention to my instincts." Hunt tried several more questions, attempting to make Lily seem confused or unreliable, but she held firm. She answered every question clearly and calmly. She never wavered from her account. Finally, Hunt gave up and sat down. Rhodes called me as her final witness. I testified about teaching Lily the Whispering Crow concept, about the morning she mentioned seeing him at Dr. Novak's office, about calling the police immediately. I testified about the years of trusting Novak, about never questioning his private examinations, about the guilt I still carried for not protecting her better. Did you ever doubt your daughter's account? Rhodes asked. Not for 1 second, I said, looking directly at the jury. The moment Lily told me what happened, I knew it was true. She had no reason to lie. She wasn't seeking attention. She was terrified and traumatized and telling me about something horrible that had been done to her. I believed her completely. The defense rested without calling any witnesses. Hunt had apparently decided that putting Dr. Novak on the stand would be suicide given the video evidence. Instead, he relied on his closing argument to claim reasonable doubt. The prosecution wants you to believe that thorough medical examinations constitute sexual abuse, he told the jury. They want you to convict a dedicated physician based on misunderstandings and misinterpretations by children and their parents. Catherine Rhodes eviscerated that argument in her closing. The defense wants you to ignore video evidence of systematic sexual abuse, she said. They want you to believe that 61 children and their families all misunderstood the same actions the same way. They want you to believe that a grown man who recorded himself touching children inappropriately for 7 years was just doing his job. Don't insult your own intelligence by accepting that narrative. You saw the videos. You heard the witnesses. You know exactly what Raymond Novak did. Find him guilty on every count. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the 4 persons stood and delivered guilty verdicts on all 43 counts of child sexual abuse that had gone to trial. Novak's face remained blank as the verdicts were read, but his attorney looked devastated. The sentencing hearing happened 4 weeks later. Rhodes called several victims to give impact statements. They testified about nightmares, about therapy, about struggling to trust doctors and teachers and other authority figures, about feeling violated and betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect them. When it was our turn, David read a statement we had written together while Lily sat between us. Dr. Novak stole our daughter's innocence and sense of safety, David said. He betrayed the trust we placed in him as a medical professional. Lily will carry this trauma for the rest of her life. We ask that you impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Thornton, delivered a scathing statement before sentencing. Dr. Novak, you used your position as a pediatrician to sexually abuse vulnerable children over many years, she said. You exploited the trust that parents place in medical professionals. You caused immeasurable harm to dozens of young victims. You recorded your crimes for your own gratification. You showed no remorse during this trial. I find your actions reprehensible and deserving of the harshest punishment available under Oregon law. She sentenced him to 43 consecutive terms of 20 years each, a total of 860 years in prison. Novak would die in custody. He would never be free again. The courtroom erupted in applause. Catherine Rhodes had tears running down her face. David and I held Lily between us and sobbed with relief and grief and rage. 2 years later, Lily is 13. She still sees Dr. Price for therapy, but less frequently now. The nightmares have decreased. She joined a new soccer team with a female coach and is playing again. She's doing well in school, has good friends, laughs more often than she cries. But the trauma hasn't disappeared. She's still anxious around male authority figures. She still struggles with doctor's appointments. She still sees the Whispering Crow sometimes when she's scared. And that's okay. He saved her once. He gave her a language for recognizing danger when she was too young to articulate it any other way. The other victims are healing too, at different paces, with different struggles. Some families moved away from Riverside, unable to stay in the town where their children were abused. Others stayed and fought for changes to medical oversight systems. A coalition of parents successfully lobbied the state legislature to pass new laws requiring pediatric examination rooms to have windows, requiring medical boards to investigate all abuse allegations more aggressively, requiring hospitals to conduct more thorough background checks and credentialing reviews. Dr. Novak's case became a watershed moment for pediatric medical safety protocols. Medical schools now teach courses on maintaining appropriate boundaries with patients. Professional organizations updated their guidelines. The culture shifted slowly toward better protection for children in medical settings. Last week, Lily asked me about writing a book about her experience. Dr. Price thinks it might help other kids, she said. Kids who don't know how to recognize when something bad is happening to them. Maybe if they read about the Whispering Crow, they'll understand they can trust their instincts too. I told her we could think about it. That maybe when she's older and has more distance from the trauma, she could share her story if she wanted to. That it would be her choice entirely. That night, I went into her room to say goodnight and found her drawing at her desk. She had sketched the Whispering Crow in purple and black-colored pencils, perched on a tree branch, his yellow eyes watching over a small house below. He's still protecting me, Lily said when she noticed me watching. Even though I'm older now and I know he's not real, he reminds me to pay attention when things feel wrong. I kissed the top of her head and told her I loved her. The Whispering Crow had started as a silly bedtime story to comfort a frightened 4-year-old, but he had transformed into something more meaningful. a symbol of the instincts children need to recognize danger, a language for naming fear when words fail, and ultimately the thing that gave my daughter the courage to speak the truth that put a monster behind bars where he belonged. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.